Now I would like to ask John Clarke, one of the beloved leader of the working class in Canada and the leading figure of the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty, please come and deliver your speech. Thanks, John.
Well, thank you very much, comrades, and I'm very pleased again this year to be able to bring May Day greetings to you from the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty. May Day, I think, is always a time to try to take stock of the situation, where our struggles are and what we find ourselves up against. And this year, I think the situation globally has intensified enormously. And we really can talk in terms of the capitalist system being at war, in terms of its attack on working class people globally, on many, many fronts. We're here in the province of Ontario, where a government has been elected under the leadership of Doug Ford that is engaged in a program essentially of class war against working class people. It comes to power, and the first thing it does is eliminates increases in the minimum wage to lift the poorest workers a little out of poverty. And it continues that attack. It has just introduced a budget that cuts billions of dollars out of the most vital programs, including programs for the poorest people, for Indigenous people. It is clearly a budget of Bay Street class war on working class people in the province of Ontario. And globally, that agenda of neoliberal austerity and attack has intensified dramatically. Up until 2007, the global order of neoliberalism was functioning on the basis of a period of relative expansion. It then moves into crisis in 2007, and there is what is called the Great Recession. And then the Great Recession, after the Great Recession, we see a period of economic stagnation throughout the world, with very, very little recovery taking place. And now there is every indication, when you look at the major economies of the world, that they are moving towards another major economic downturn. And those who hoped in 2007 that this crisis would produce some kind of easing of the neoliberal agenda of austerity made a very, very big mistake. Clearly, as the system moves deeper into crisis, it seeks more and more to make working class people pay for the burden of the crisis. And so the attack intensifies as the system moves deeper and deeper into crisis. And that's reflected right here in Ontario. It's reflected in the worsening condition of working class people. It's reflected in the growing numbers of people that must turn to food banks in order to survive. And it's reflected in the incredible crisis of homelessness that exists in this city. So that's certainly true. Capitalism is also, however, on the attack on the basis of its pursuit of an agenda of war and militarism to an intensified degree. I don't know how many people saw this, but there is just a report of Donald Trump going and announcing that the United States will pull out of the International Arms Treaty Agreement, and he chooses to announce that at a meeting of the National Rifle Association, the NRA. He talked openly of feeding the profits of the merchants of death throughout the world as his government prepares its attack on Venezuela, it prepares its attack on a whole series of countries throughout the world. So on that front, capitalism is on the attack. But also today, we must be struck by capitalism being at war with the planet itself. The incredible ecological crisis that exists throughout the world is having a greater and greater effect. And clearly, as the impacts of environmental pollution and climate change impact this planet, it is going to be working class people and poor people who pay the price. The rich can always find ways to escape from the effects that they are imposing, but it's going to be the poorest people who pay the price. And right now in Mozambique, a second cyclone is coming down on that country in a situation where it has already been devastated, and a cholera epidemic has broken out. So when the famous proposition was put forward that the choice is between socialism and barbarism, I think today we have to say that the situation is even worse than that. We're talking about this system questioning the very ability of life to survive on this planet. Species are being eliminated at an incredible rate. The impact of environmental catastrophe is bearing down on us. And that remains fundamentally true. And in each of these areas, when people look at what needs to be done, the simple reality is that there is no real lasting solution. We must take up our immediate struggles, of course, but there is no solution outside of the struggle for socialism. That's, I think, the fundamental lesson that we have to learn. There is no way out of the economic crisis in some enlightened or progressive capitalism that is the dream of some liberals and social democrats. That doesn't exist, it's not reality. This system will pursue an agenda of war and militarism until we stop it, and that is the reality. And all those who think that there is some green capitalism that is going to create a paradise on earth and solve the ecological crisis is wrong. A system that is based on the profit needs of a few can never develop a sustained relationship with the planet on which we live, and that, I think, is the pressing reality. So on this May Day, I think we, as always, must redouble our commitment to the struggle for socialism. Because socialism isn't an outlandish idea that only a few can cling to. It is a pressing need for the working class internationally, and indeed for the future of humanity. On this day, on this celebration of May Day in Iran, union activists are paying an incredible price for the struggle for the most basic workers' rights. People are being imprisoned, people are facing incredible state repression from a regime that fully understands state repression and is highly expert in the subject. And people are fighting back all across this world. Everywhere people struggle, everywhere working class people take to the streets, they strike, they take up their fights. And those fights are all fundamentally important. They are the building blocks. But those fights must everywhere be given a socialist consciousness, a socialist meaning in order to succeed. That, I think, on May Day is the primary commitment. We commit ourselves to working class struggle, but we commit ourselves to the struggle for socialism and a human society really worth living in. Thank you very much, colleagues.